What if I told you that an entire town once literally danced itself to death? Or that a group of expert hikers in the dead of a frozen night sliced their way out of their own tent and fled into a blizzard, only to be found in a state of unexplainable terror? You think you know history. Maybe not the whole story. These aren't scenes from some horror movie. They are real documented events from our own past, hiding in the footnotes of history, just waiting to be rediscovered. History is filled with stories that just defy logic, events so bizarre and terrifying they sound completely made up. But these aren't myths. These are cases that have left experts scratching their heads for decades, even centuries. From cryptic clues left at the scene of a mass disappearance to a bizarre weather event that literally rained meat from the sky, the truth is often far stranger and way more horrifying than any fiction. Today, we're counting down 10 of the most bizarre and terrifying historical horrors that science and reason still can't fully explain. So maybe pull the blinds and get ready to question what you thought you knew about the past. We begin our countdown with a story that is as grotesque as it is baffling. Picture it, a clear spring day, March 3rd, 1876, in Bath County, Kentucky. A farmer's wife, a Mrs. Crouch, is outside on her porch when something strange starts falling from the sky. It isn't rain, it's not snow. It was, for all appearances, raw meat. For several minutes, chunks of red flesh, some reportedly as big as 3 or 4 inches square, rained down over a 100-yard area. Witnesses described it as snowing meat. The sky was clear, which just added to the impossibility of it all. This was so startling it was reported in newspapers across the country, including the Scientific American and the New York Times. So, what was it? Samples were collected. A few brave locals even tasted the stuff, declaring it was either lamb or venison. Early scientific analysis couldn't come to a conclusion. One idea was nostoc, a type of bacteria that swells into a jelly-like mass when it gets wet, but it hadn't been raining. The most enduring and, frankly, disgusting theory suggests it was the result of a flock of vultures vomiting in unison. Vultures are known to do this when they get startled. While this is considered the most plausible explanation, nobody actually saw any vultures that day. The sheer amount of meat has kept the debate alive, making the Kentucky meat shower a uniquely bizarre footnote in history. Our next story takes us back to 12th century England, to the small village of Woolpit. The story, recorded by 2 different chroniclers of the time, sounds like it's straight out of a fairy tale, but it was reported as a real event. One day during harvest, villagers found 2 children, a brother and sister, huddled near one of the wolf pits that gave the village its name. They looked like any other children except for one glaring detail. Their skin was a distinct shade of green. The children spoke a language nobody recognized and were dressed in strange clothes. Taken in by a local landowner, they refused to eat anything until they were offered raw, broad beans, which they devoured. Sadly, the boy, who was weaker, died shortly after being baptized. The girl, however, survived. Over time, her green skin faded to a normal color as she learned to eat other foods. She also learned to speak English, and when she could finally tell her story, it only made things weirder. She claimed she and her brother came from a place called St. Martin's Land, an underground world where the sun never shone and everything was in a constant twilight. She said they had been herding their father's flock when they heard a loud noise, like bells, and followed the sound through a cave which led them into the bright sunlight of Woolpit. So what could explain this incredible story? Modern theories are a bit less fantastical. One compelling idea suggests the children were Flemish immigrants. There were communities of Flemish settlers in England at the time who were being persecuted. The children could have been orphans, fleeing violence, who wandered into Woolpit speaking only Flemish. Their green colour? That could have been caused by chlorosis, a severe form of anemia from malnutrition that can give the skin a greenish tint. But that doesn't explain the tale of a subterranean world. Was it just a child's confused memory, or a glimpse into a reality we can't begin to comprehend? There is no tale of the sea more haunting than that of the Mary Celeste. The name itself has become a synonym for ghost ships. On December 4th, 1872, the crew of a Canadian ship called the Dei Gratia was sailing in the Atlantic when they spotted another vessel drifting erratically. It was the Mary Celeste, an American merchant ship that had left New York for Italy almost a month earlier. As they got closer, they knew something was terribly wrong. The ship was silent. The captain of the Dei Gratia sent a boarding party over, and they found a ship in near-perfect condition, yet completely empty. The cargo of over 1,700 barrels of denatured industrial alcohol was almost entirely untouched. The crew's personal belongings, their money, their valuables, all of it was still in their quarters. A 6-month supply of food and water was still on board, but there was no one there. Captain Benjamin Briggs, his wife, his 2-year-old daughter, and the 7 experienced crewmen were gone. The only things missing were the ship's single lifeboat, the chronometer, and the sextant. The last log entry was dated November 25th, placing the ship hundreds of miles from where it was found, and it said nothing was wrong. Theories have been swirling for over 150 years. Pirates were ruled out, the valuable cargo was still there. Mutiny seemed unlikely, but clues pointed to a hasty yet orderly evacuation. One of the more compelling modern theories involves the cargo itself. It's possible that some of the alcohol barrels leaked, creating a buildup of flammable vapor in the hold. Fearing an imminent explosion, the captain might have ordered everyone into the lifeboat, tying it to the ship to wait out the danger. A sudden storm could have snapped the rope, leaving them adrift in the ocean while their perfectly sound ship sailed on, becoming an eternal mystery. From a ghost ship on the sea, we go to a lonely rock in the Outer Hebrides of Scotland. At the turn of the 20th century, the lighthouse on the island of Eilean Mor was manned by 3 men: Thomas Marshall, James Ducat, and Donald MacArthur. In December of 1900, all 3 of them vanished. The mystery started on December 15th, when a passing ship noticed the lighthouse was dark. Because of storms, a relief vessel couldn't get to the island until December 26th. The relief keeper, Joseph Moore, went ashore and found the main gate and door closed. Inside, 2 of the 3 oilskin coats were gone, but one was left hanging. In the kitchen, a meal was half eaten, and an overturned chair hinted at a sudden departure. The clocks had all stopped. The men were gone. The official investigation concluded that the men were probably swept away by a freak wave while working near the sea during a storm. This is the logical explanation, but it doesn't account for some of the strange details. Why was one man's coat left behind, meaning he went out into a raging storm without it? Why was the chair knocked over? Later, a totally fabricated logbook entry was published in a magazine, talking about the men's growing fear, which only fueled supernatural theories. But even without that fiction, the truth is unsettling. Did a rogue wave truly rise over 150 feet to pluck them from the cliffs? We will probably never know what really happened on that desolate rock. Christmas Eve, 1945. In Fayetteville, West Virginia, the Sodder family was settling in for the night. George and Jenny Sodder had 9 of their 10 children at home. Just after 1 a.m., a fire broke out in the house. George, Jenny, and 4 of their children managed to escape. But 5 of the children, Maurice, Martha, Louis, Jenny, and Betty, aged 5 to 14, were trapped upstairs. They were never seen again. The fire itself was a horrible tragedy. But it's what happened after that turns this story into a truly dark mystery. The fire was officially blamed on faulty wiring and death certificates were issued, but the family never believed it. George Sodder had tried desperately to get to the kids, but his ladder was mysteriously missing from its usual spot. It was later found tossed in an embankment. Even stranger, the phone lines to the house were found to have been cut. But here's the most disturbing part. After the fire, which burned the house to the ground, absolutely no human remains were ever found in the ashes. Not a single bone. Experts at the time insisted the fire couldn't have been hot enough to completely destroy 5 bodies. The family began to suspect the children hadn't died in the fire at all, but were kidnapped. George Sodder had been an outspoken critic of Mussolini, and he feared this was retaliation by the local Sicilian mafia. For the rest of their lives, the Sodder family kept a billboard along Route 16, offering a reward for information, displaying the photos of their lost children, and hoping for an answer that never came. We're halfway through our countdown, and the stories only get stranger from here. If you find these dives into the darkest corners of history as fascinating as we do, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a new investigation. Let us know in the comments which story so far has you the most baffled. Now, let's get back to the countdown. You've probably heard the name, but the full story is way more chilling than you remember. In 1587, a group of 115 Englishmen, women and children set up a settlement on Roanoke Island in what is now North Carolina. It was meant to be the first permanent English colony in the New World. The governor, John White, sailed back to England for supplies, leaving behind his entire family, including his granddaughter, Virginia Dare, the first English child born in the Americas. But war broke out between England and Spain, and White's return was delayed by 3 long years. When he finally got back to Roanoke in 1590, he found the colony completely empty. There were no signs of a fight, no bodies, no graves. The houses had been taken down, not destroyed, suggesting the colonists left in an organised way. The only clue was a single cryptic word carved into a fence post: Croatoan. Croatoan was the name of a nearby island and the Native American tribe who lived there. White assumed the colonists had moved there, which they had planned to do if they got into trouble. But a storm was coming, and his ships were forced to leave and return to England. He never saw his family again. So what happened to the lost colony? The most accepted theory is that they did go to live with the Croatoan people and were gradually absorbed into their society. But other theories have never gone away. Were they wiped out by disease? Did the Spanish find and execute them? Did they try to sail back to England on their own and get lost at sea? For over 400 years, the fate of those 115 people has remained one of America's oldest and most haunting mysteries. This next case from Brazil in 1966 is one of the strangest things you will ever hear. On August 17th, a young boy flying a kite on Vintém Hill, a remote spot near Rio de Janeiro, stumbled upon a bizarre scene. The bodies of 2 men, Manuel Pereira de Cruz and Miguel José Viana. The men were lying on their backs, dressed in nice suits. That was weird enough for a remote hilltop, but it was what they were wearing on their faces that made this a legendary mystery. Both men had crude lead masks over their eyes, the kind someone might use for protection from radiation. Next to the bodies was a small notebook. Inside was a cryptic note that basically said, 4:30 p.m. Be at the determined place. 6:30 p.m. Swallow capsules after effect, protect metals, await mask signal. There was no sign of a struggle and no obvious cause of death. Because the bodies were so hard to get to, an autopsy wasn't performed for several days, and by then, their internal organs were too decomposed to test for poison. The 2 men were electronics technicians who were also known UFO enthusiasts, part of a fringe group that tried to contact aliens. Did they willingly take part in some bizarre suicide pact, thinking they were about to be beamed up? Were the capsules some kind of poison? Or were they murdered by someone else who fled the scene? The strange note, the lead masks, and the lack of a clear cause of death have left this case as a perfect, horrifying blend of science fiction and true crime. We now travel to a remote farmstead in Bavaria, Germany, called Hinterkaifeck. What happened here in the spring of 1922 isn't just an unsolved crime. It is an act of such chilling brutality and strangeness that it has haunted Germany for a century. On the evening of March 31st, an unknown killer brutally murdered all 6 people living on the farm. The victims were Andreas Gruber and his wife Cecilia, their widowed daughter Victoria, her 2 children Cecilia and Joseph, and the family's new maid, Maria Baumgartner. All of them were lured one by one into the barn and killed with a mattock, which is like a pickaxe. The killer then went into the house and murdered the young boy Joseph in his crib and the maid Maria in her bedroom. But that's not even the most horrifying part. The horror didn't end with the murders. Evidence shows the killer then stayed at the farm for 3 days. They fed the livestock, ate meals in the kitchen and kept a fire going, all while the bodies of the family lay stacked in the barn. It was only when neighbours noticed the family hadn't been around for days that the horrifying discovery was made. The investigation uncovered even more unsettling details. The previous maid had quit, claiming the house was haunted and that she heard footsteps in the attic. Days before the murders, Andreas Gruber told neighbours he'd found a strange newspaper on his property and had seen a set of footprints in the snow leading from the woods to his house, but none leading back. He also heard noises in the attic and realised his house keys were missing. Police interviewed over 100 suspects, but they never found the killer. The phantom of Hinterkaifeck simply vanished, leaving behind one of the most gruesome and puzzling mass murders in history. Imagine a plague that doesn't give you a fever, but an uncontrollable urge to dance. It sounds ridiculous, but in July of 1518 in the city of Strasbourg, it was a terrifying reality. It all started with one woman, known as Frau Trophäa. She stepped into the street and just began to dance, and she didn't stop. For nearly a week she danced, without rest. Within days, dozens of others had joined her. By August, the dancing plague had consumed as many as 400 people, and they weren't dancing for joy. Accounts from the time describe them as convulsive and spastic. They were trapped in a horrific marathon, their bodies drenched in sweat, their faces twisted in agony. The city authorities had no idea what to do. Their first diagnosis was hot blood, and in a disastrously bad attempt at a cure, they encouraged the afflicted to just dance it out. They cleared out guild halls, built a wooden stage, and even hired musicians to provide a beat, thinking the dancers would just get tired. But this only made things worse. People began to collapse and die from heart attacks, strokes, and pure exhaustion. The plague finally subsided in September, just as mysteriously as it had begun. What could cause something like this? One theory points to ergot, a fungus that grows on damp rye and can cause convulsions and hallucinations. But the most accepted explanation is a case of mass psychogenic illness, or mass hysteria. The people of Strasbourg in 1518 were under immense stress from famine and disease. That, combined with a superstitious belief that a saint could curse people with a dancing plague, may have created a perfect storm for a stress-induced psychosis that spread like a virus. And now we've reached number one. An incident so strange, so terrifying, and so fiercely debated, it stands as the ultimate unexplained historical horror. In February 1959, 9 experienced Soviet hikers led by Igor Dyatlov set out on a tough expedition in the northern Ural Mountains. They never came back. When they missed their check-in date, a search party was sent out. On February 26th, they found the group's tent on the slopes of a mountain ominously named Koletsiakl, or Mountain of the Dead, and what they discovered was the start of a terrifying puzzle. The tent had been sliced open from the inside. The hikers' boots, coats, and supplies were all left behind. 9 sets of footprints, some from people wearing only socks or who were completely barefoot, led away from the tent and down the slope into the freezing -40-degree night. The bodies were found scattered in different locations over the next few months. The first 2 were by a cedar tree at the edge of a forest, underdressed and next to the remains of a small fire. 3 others were found between the tent and the tree, looking like they died of hypothermia while trying to get back to camp. But it was the last 4 bodies, found 2 months later in a ravine under feet of snow, that sealed this case in horror. They had suffered catastrophic injuries. 1 had a fractured skull, 2 had massive chest fractures, the kind of damage you'd see in a high-speed car crash. And 1, Lyudmila Dubinina, was missing her tongue, eyes, and part of her face. To make it all even stranger, some of their clothing was found to be radioactive. For decades, the case was closed, with the cause of death officially listed as a compelling natural force. Theories ran wild: an avalanche, secret weapons tests, a UFO, even a Yeti attack. In 2021, a major study proposed that a rare slab avalanche was the trigger, a small delayed slide of packed snow that could have caused the internal injuries and forced the terrified group to flee. This is the leading scientific theory, but it still doesn't explain every bizarre detail. Why did they flee so far in that state? What about the radiation? What happened to Lyudmila? The Dyatlov Pass incident remains a chilling testament to the terrifying power of the unknown. From dancing plagues to skies that rain meat, history is full of moments that defy easy explanation. These 10 stories are just a handful of the times where logic simply breaks down, leaving us with more questions than answers. They remind us that for all our science and all our knowledge, the past still holds dark corners and deep mysteries that may never see the light of day. And they prove that sometimes the most terrifying stories are the ones that are absolutely true. What do you think? Which of these historical horrors do you find the most unsettling? Are there any other unexplained events that keep you up at night? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more journeys into the weird and wonderful corners of our shared past. Until next time, stay curious.